Sean
So,
Diddy Combs.
okay. So I guess he was his home was searched by the Department of Homeland Security and their Homeland Security investigative branch. And allegedly there were allegations of sexual assault, trafficking, all kinds of different things in the open source news media. Any other kind of illegal activity they could probably dogpile on them so they can get in. But here's the thing, just real quick for again current events. A lot of folks don't understand the whole search warrant process and how it works. I'm going to give a couple of thoughts and then I'll let you close it out as again officer of the court. But from when I used to have to approve, or I was an affiant on warrants, and when I used to have to approve them, I used to tell my folks there were a couple of factors. One, what's the good faith in this? Why are we doing it? Right? There has to be some sort of good reason, and then there had to be a probable cause statement. There had to be an articulable sense of circumstances and facts that led us to believe that there was a crime committed, and that crime, evidence of that crime, could have been left in this home location, what have you. And then you have to, go to the magistrate, a neutral authority, to get somebody to look at this and give you that legal authority. You can't just show up. Now there are exceptions, which I won't get into the search warrant, the search warrant exceptions, but those are the type of things that you had to look at. And then finally, you had to look in and say, what is the specificity or particularity of what you're looking for? Right? You have to be able to articulate these things. You can't go on fishing trips. It can't be a malicious search where you're just going there to harass and things of that sort. So once you articulate those points, and once you have some experienced folks who can put together a good affidavit, uh, then you would go and conduct the search, right? So there are many different search protocols, which again we can hit at a different time. But as an officer of the court, Stuart, when you receive the other side of that law enforcement action. What are your thoughts on what happened with Mr. Combs?
Well, what I found interesting in this particular case, my phone rang off the hook. I got a call from every news outlet out there, not only nationally but internationally, and it was really interesting that a lot of people don't really understand the procedure and what it involves in connection with a search warrant, and why a search warrant is not necessarily the same or doesn't rise to the same level of an arrest warrant leading up to, where you would then ultimately prosecute the person. The most important factor in connection with any search warrant that is applied for, the information that is contained within the warrant to some extent cannot be stale or cannot be too historical. It must be fresh. And usually fresh means within 30 days. And by way of example is if you were in the presence of someone last year and you were in their home and you saw them in possession of a kilo of cocaine, today, a year later, the DEA could not go to that person's house just based upon that information and execute a search warrant to say that person, is possession or he or she is a drug dealer. However, if that information was cultivated, and then they would get the person to maybe make a call to that person and order up a sample of cocaine, that may be enough to refresh that historical information to then lead ultimately to a magistrate signing off on a search warrant. But Chris, as you and I both know, and this is really interesting, that I found interesting this week, that a lot of people don't realize this, is just because there is smoke doesn't necessarily automatically turn into that there's a fire.